I'm Marley here at C3, and I'm with Greg Hildebrant, who just finished his autograph session and panel. So can you tell me, did you enjoy your panel? What do you think?
I thought it was terrific. It's a cosplay thing, and I've been making costumes since I was a little kid.
Yeah?
So that's been a big gig for me. And I do it in my work. I've been doing it in my work for 50 years,
Yeah,
I
that's
suppose,
awesome.
you know?
So your work has been so famous for so long, and it's been through Harry Potter to Tolkien, but your most important piece, of course, is Star Wars. So, did you think that creating that it would get to where it was now? I'm sure you get asked this, but it's so crazy.
Look, I mean, can I give the whole story? Do you
Yeah,
mind?
of course.
Look, Tim, my brother, I had a twin brother. He died 10 years ago. We did everything together up to that point, but this is before Star Wars, 1973. Tim and I had been illustrating for about 8 years, everything we could find in Manhattan, every publisher we went to, and it was getting kind of dry because we were down to illustrating a toilet training book.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's do something more dramatic. So in those days, you could open up the Yellow Pages, a phone book, and look for, movie poster producers. John and Murray, what's that? Ring. Call. John answers, hey, John, I'm Greg Hildebrant. I'm an artist. I have a portfolio. I'd like to come and show you. Yeah, come on in tomorrow. You could literally talk to people, that ran companies, and they come in. So we went in, and standing all around the place in John's office were these posters for Young Frankenstein. That's the Mel Brooks film,
Yeah.
the black and white film. And I went nuts. Tim and my brother went nuts. What's this? Because we were Mel Brooks fans, and we were fans of the Universal Monster movies, and it's black and white, and it's just incredible. We got to do a poster. And they said, well, I'm sorry, it's all done. The budget's gone. And they're all being shipped off tomorrow morning to Mel Brooks. I said, I don't care. We got to do one. We'll do one overnight. I don't care. And the guy said, well, okay. So they gave us a bunch of 8x10 glossies out of the movie. Tim and I I live in Jersey. We got on the train, both of us do, and we figured out the setup, the composition on the train for Young Frankenstein. And we brought it back the next morning. These guys, we painted it overnight, literally around the clock. They went nuts over the fact that we finished a picture overnight. They didn't use it. But segue to the future now, we get famous for illustrating The Lord of the Rings for Ballantine Books, and so now we have a global fandom for fantasy. John calls from his office and says, hey, you guys got to help us out, remembering that we painted a picture overnight. You guys got to help us out here. We have a poster here for some science fiction movie, and the director doesn't like the poster he has, whatever that was, I don't know. And can you help us out? So we got on the train, went into the city, and it was the Star Wars poster. We worked out the setup with the guys in the shop there, and went home and painted it in 36 hours.
Oh man, that's crazy.
So that's how I got the job.
That's awesome.
So that 36 hours, I always say that if I knew it was going to last so long, I would have put 2 more hours in on it.
Yeah.
But that's how that poster occurred. And I got swept up, and Tim did, into the mania over Star Wars.
That's incredible. So, also your work has been on so many other things. You have you did art for Magic the Gathering, is that right?
That's much later. I mean, I started in animation in Detroit. I was born and raised in Detroit. I started working in an animation company, an industrial film producer. They made films for industry, Chevy, Ford, whoever. But there were animators in the animation department of this company. I was 18 when I started there.
Oh man, that's crazy.
And there were animators there from Max Fleischer's studio. And Max Fleischer's animated Betty Boop and Popeye back in the 30s. And they also worked on those Superman shorts, if you've ever seen them. The Max Fleischer Superman cartoons from some of the greatest animation of all time. Well, I started with these people. I started studying and learning animation and photography, live action, stop motion animation. So then I came to New York and made documentary films for 6 years. I ran camera, did sound, edited on a moviola. I mean, I'm talking film,
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, oh yeah, I did we did 6 films back then, and then I started illustrating children's books around New York City, Macmillan, Random House, you name it, Golden Books for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. And then we illustrated The Lord of the Rings, and that gave us a global fandom. So I had a career that spanned 30-something years before I did The Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars poster. You see what I'm saying? So most people, younger people think that my career began with either the Star Wars poster or The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, because that all came much later. Then I did a lot of stuff for Marvel Comics, a trading card set, and a couple of graphic novels. In fact, I'm still doing stuff for Marvel right now.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you grew up in Detroit, with your brother. So did Detroit influence you to do some of your art, and did you get influences from that, or was it mostly New York?
Well, Detroit was like, it's my hometown, and I grew up there in the 1940s when it was really kind of a very idealistic place. My memory, I go back to, it's like a Frank Capra movie. It's like, It's a Wonderful Life. That's how I remember the neighborhood I grew up in. So, a lot of the kids drew. A lot of the guys on the block that I lived on, comic books were everything because that was the main thing. We had no TV. You had radio and movies, Saturday matinees that you go to, but comic books were the main thing. So we all collected comic books, and we all copied the comic books or the comic strips, the daily and Sunday strips, which were Hal Foster's Prince Valiant and Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon, and tons of great art. And so the influences like from Detroit, the neighborhood in the surrounding area, and the museum, the Detroit Art Museum, is one of the best in the country. So my parents totally supported what I did, which was unusual in a blue-collar world in the 1940s. But the Detroit Art Museum had a fantastic collection of Egyptian medieval art. In the entrance hall, there was a mural by Diego Rivera. I mean, these days nobody knows who that artist is. He was a Mexican artist, and he was a muralist. And that mural influenced me. It was sequential in terms of its storytelling and powerful in its content. So that had a giant impact on me. And I think the movie theaters back then were these Art Deco masterpieces like the Fox Theater downtown and the Adams, where I first saw my first Disney films that totally turned me on to animation.
Yeah.
So I love, my memories of Detroit are really warm and cozy and wonderful. So that kind of like formed me.
Yeah.
New York then became a place where I worked out of in terms of, and I love New York. It's a great city. It's fantastic.
Detroit's
But
your home.
yeah, Detroit still is my home. Even though I live in Jersey.
Yeah. So, like, where did you decide that you wanted to be an artist? Like, did you start drawing when you were really young, or like, was it just the other influences that came about?
I always say this, and it's kind of like true. It might sound kind of weird, but I didn't choose art; it chose me.
Yeah.
Because it was an obsession that I don't think Tim or I could draw any better than most kids our age.
Mm-hmm.
It's that what we had was this obsessive drive to keep at it.
Yeah.
And I did an interview with my mother before she died. She died at 95, and I did a long tape with her, videoed her. She said that she remembered that what she saw about Tim and me was at 3 years old, our attention spans were long. We could stick with something for long periods of time. I think that's the critical thing.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't learn that. That's something that's inbred or heredity.
Mm-hmm.
And so but there was that ability of patience and obsession to stay with stuff. That's how, and that's from my earliest memory. I never thought about being anything else other than doing artwork. Ever.
So what's your favorite piece you've done? I know you've done a lot of pinup too, which is awesome, but like out of all of the art you've like done, which one do you like say is your favorite that really just...
Look, I always give the same answer. It's the next one.
The next one?
Yeah, because it's like, I can look back in all, it's like I say, there's an obsessive compulsive urge to move forward and keep exploring.
Yeah.
That's the feeling I have. So I turned 78 3 days ago.
Oh man, happy
So,
birthday.
yeah, so to me, I might as well be 18 or 12. I mean, it isn't any different from me. I'm still trying to figure it out or to get it right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're always improving.
Yeah, you're always on this path of exploration and just trying to get it right. So the favorite one is the next one or the one after that.
Keep going. And then what about the process of creating something? Like, I'm sure it takes a lot of like time and thought to like come up with like a crazy masterpiece. So like, how does that happen?
Masterpiece.
They're definitely, you created...
No, I never think of those. It's like I'm just trying to get it right. That's all. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The thing is, I enjoy the process immensely. It's first of all starts as a thought. It's internal, and a lot of that that'll dwell around something. An image will be. I'm doing a cover right now. I was sketching on it this morning for Marvel. It's a Deadpool versus Punisher.
Oh, that's awesome.
So a comic book. So that came up, several days ago to do. So I started thinking about, I'm laying it out in my head. Boom, boom, come left, right. Come. So and then I start to do little doodles. Just and I'll probably like with this cover. I've probably drawn it 40 different ways.
Yeah.
Just tiny little thumbnails. Just trying to get the action and the composition set up. And then once I land on a couple of them that I like, then I draw them bigger and I start to clean it up. So I'll go over those now with Gene, my my partner, and she'll say, I like this one and this one, and I'll say, good. And then we'll get models, and pose them and take photographs, and I'll do a finished drawing, and then I'm going to send that over to Marvel. Probably a couple versions of it, and then and then the next phase, of course, will be painting. And I'm already, while I'm doing the drawing, I'm thinking of the lighting, because that's everything. Is it backlit, rim lit, fire lit, low lit? Where's the blue light? Where's the orange light? All different colored light. Yeah, and so I'm thinking of that now as I do the layout. And so when I photograph it, all that will come into play, all the proper lighting setup, and then I'll sit down and paint it. And that whole process, depends on. Could take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
How long it takes? Yeah. Like out of all the universes you've worked on, which one has to be your favorite? Because my favorite is definitely Star Wars, of course.
I can see that. Well, again, I don't think I have a favorite.
Yeah.
I'm as enthused about getting up and doing this cover, and they're not my characters. It's not original for me, but I have fun with it. I love doing the pinups. That's all mine. That's 100% mine, and I've loved the Lord of the Rings when I did it with my brother. That was incredible, and I don't know if I have any one favorite.
It's like picking children or costumes.
Yeah.
I could never pick which one's my favorite.
Yeah, I can't land on that. I would never say. The thing that I'm involved in the moment is my favorite.
Yeah.
That's the way that works.
Yeah. Created your own fantasy world, Ursharak. So can you tell me the process of how it came to be and where you get the ideas from?
Well, right after Tim and I finished the third Lord of the Rings calendar for Ballantine Books, we said this should be a movie. Now this is 1977, 76, way before the films. And we then brought it up to Ian Summers, the art director at Ballantine Books, then our then agent, and he said, I'll check it out. So he checked it out and found out that Ralph Bakshi, Saul Zaentz, had optioned it to develop for animation. So we said, well, okay, that's over with. Let's come up with our own story. That's how I started. With Tim, I said, let's do our own story. And so we started developing this concept, a quest. It would be an epic quest. It would be, all the elements that were in the rings, wizards and, dwarfs and elves and, the whole thing. And we started hammering out a script, a storyline. And then that developed, as we developed the story, we started to write it visually. We started doing storyboards. That's the way we're writing, visually. So we did about 1,000 storyboards, and then I had a friend who I always wanted to work with from my boyhood, who was going to do the wordsmithing for the project. That's the way that worked, and I didn't give a damn whether he had ever published or not. The publisher, now Ian Summers, our then agent, starts setting up meetings to pitch this at various publishers. And by this point, we've painted several paintings out of our story. We've sculpted out the storyline. It's well underway in terms of the final manuscript, and we set up these meetings to pitch it. And everybody's excited about it because we were now globally famous for the rings, and we had just did the Star Wars poster.
Oh, so you're like a budding
yeah, well, it's like you're riding this wave of this monstrous wave that takes off because of this one painting, 36-hour Star Wars painting, and the rings. But we're riding this wave of it's almost insanity because I had nothing to do with the Star Wars movie. I was post-production painting, but it didn't matter to anybody. So when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. And everybody's laying down their money betting on this book. So Ian gets several publishers into a bidding war over it, and we end up with Random House, and no, God damn it, I can't even remember the publisher, and the book gets published. But at the same time, I'm hung up on developing it for film.
Yeah.
Movies were my first obsession about Ursharak.
Yeah.
So we connected with the William Morris Agency, and they start moving us through Hollywood with this thing. And we're getting a lot of attention. People are interested in it, but they don't want to back it because they're afraid. They keep trying to turn it into a hardware movie, into a space epic, a space opera. And I kept saying, no, it's old magic. It's you know what I mean? It's not that. And they kept wanting, because of Star Wars. Everybody was trying to cash in on Star Wars. Everything had to be space. And then Well, Conan now was underway. The first Conan film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was underway, and it was being in production. So everybody was hesitant. They wanted to see what that movie was going to do like before they would get behind another fantasy film. So that while they were enthusiastic about a project, we kept getting, like, well, thanks, but no thanks. So we did that for about a year, trying to pitch it around Hollywood, and then I crashed because that was like, I didn't know what the hell else to do after that. I kind of like hit a brick wall. And then slowly came out of it and then started back up into a whole new field of illustration all over again. But Urshrak, while it was this big dream that we had to get done as a film, and it never made it, and it's still sitting there. People still keep bringing it up to me. They read it and they say, oh, this will be a great film. How come you don't make a movie out of this? I said, well, that's then, this is now. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I'll go on with other stuff. You know what I'm saying? But hey, look, I don't say no to anything. Yeah. If the possibility came to be that somebody was interested in, well, we'll say, yeah, well, let's listen to this, That's
awesome. And then for any upcoming artists, like, of course, I'm sure you get this question, but like, what would you say? Like, what is your word to them?
It's always the old thing of like, don't stop, constantly keep drawing. Drawing is foundational. Draw. First of all, it has to run you. You can't run it. Yeah. So, I mean, art ran me. I never ran it. Mm-hmm. So you have to. It has to be your entire life. Your entire existence has to be this thing. So don't ever listen to anybody's criticism of your work. I mean, if it's negative. I mean, if somebody is there to criticize your work to build you up, to help morph you into a higher mode, listen to that. But don't listen to anybody. And don't listen to that voice in your head is always going to be telling you it's not good enough. Just thank it for sharing and keep on trucking. Because that voice will never stop. It's always there. It'll always be there. It's just part of the process. So that's what I kind of tell young people. Just stick with it. Stay at it. Don't listen to anybody's negative criticism. And that voice in your head, too, that tells you it's not good enough. Thank it for sharing and keep on trucking.
People have used you as like an influence for them to start drawing. So have you seen your work in any other things? So movies, TVs, art, or just anything? Have you seen your influence on
people have told me that people, have produced various films have told me that there was a strong influence, and it gets kind of touchy to talk about that because I don't know how to phrase it exactly to be politically correct, but a lot of it is just an out-and-out swipe. So it's one thing to be, I was influenced, of course, by all those who preceded me, but I mean, I do believe that it was a chief no-no that I grew up with, that you don't trace anything, you don't steal it, Your influence. I was influenced by Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon. I was influenced by Hal Foster's Prince Valiant, but I never sat there and used that, swiped it overtly. Well, a lot of that happens, and so it's a kind of a tough conversation to have.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
It's understandable. My last question is, do you have any upcoming projects that you can tell us about?
Well, yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff for Marvel now, and we're negotiating a card set for 100 paintings, and that'll take me, and I'm excited about that possibility because the last one I did was with my twin brother, so this one will be alone, and that's a heck of a feat, 100 paintings, and plus I do all the Trans-Siberian Orchestra's work, and I have for 14 years, so this year's tour was the most successful one they had, and I did all the art for everything on print, and it appears in the LED screens in the show. And Paul O'Neill, who's the genius creator of the band, director, owner, composer, lyricist, and I have been talking for a number of years about graphic novels based on some of his stories. Yeah. So that's underway. There's several of those. Plus he's written and working on a rock theater, rock opera for Broadway or off-Broadway on the Russian Revolution. So, I've been doing art for that, and oh my God, there's 50 other things. I know I've got, and I can't think of. Jean keeps a list, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 20 things on this list, and she marks them off. Okay, Greg, today from 10 till 6, you're working on. So that's the way we work. So things get done. So I'm kind of like scrambling around in my head to see what the heck the rest of those things are. And I can't think of them.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm so glad I got to interview you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.